Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is David Malley. I'm the MC of Everyday Short Stories. Thank you. For you guys who haven't been here, Everyday Short Stories is I just throw out a topic, and then people come up and do about 5 minutes on that topic. The topic's generally a true story, something that's happened in their life. There's a NPR show, Moth Radio Hour, so it's kind of similar format to that. And this month's topic is regret. So nice, fun, light-hearted topic that I think. And I usually try to tell a story or two, and I'm going to try to tell my story of regret. So, and my story of regret that sticks out the most with me is when I was 16, and it was the summer between my sophomore and junior year. I was walking through the park with a friend named John. And John was somebody I'd grown up with. And John had noticed that I started to change a little bit, that I was becoming a little more popular in school, that I was, getting a little more attention. And we're walking through this park in Columbus, Ohio, and John starts singing the Rolling Stones song, walking through Central Park, singing After Dark, shuffling to my feet, and then he says, "People think you're crazy, and what's the matter with you, boy?" He kept saying that to me. He just kind of had this earwig that he just couldn't get rid of. And we're walking, and eventually he turns to me and says, we're now the upperclassmen in high school, and people are going to kind of look to us. We're going to kind of be a leader. And when I think about being a leader, I want to be a good guy. And John and I were huge comic book nerds, and this was before being a comic nerd was popular, and socially acceptable. And I always had this idea of being a superhero and being the guy that everybody looked up to, and had some serious morals and and a good backbone. And I turned to John and I said, "That's a great idea. I want to be that guy that the underclassmen can look up to." And so flash forward to school starts. I start hanging out with the more popular kids, and I really wanted to be accepted. So what did I do? I caved. I caved like that. And the second a kid that I decided was a geek or my friends decided was a nerd walked by, I let them have it, And we all tried to get laughs, It was all at the expense of other people. And the more I did this, the crappier I felt. But the more I did it, the more my friends laughed. And I was good at it. I could make people fucking cry. I was so fucking mean and so hateful. I just let these kids have it. And the kids that just never deserved it. They were just totally nice kids. They were quiet, maybe. They dressed funny, And I just couldn't stop myself because I was being accepted by the popular kids. So flash forward to college, and I'm meeting and hanging out with people who aren't like that, who accepted me for being me, and they liked my sense of humor. And as a matter of fact, they deterred me from being mean. And I appreciated that. And then I started thinking about high school and what a jerk I was in high school. And I realized what I want to do is every day think about this time in my life where I was a dickhead to people, and make myself a better person and try harder to be that guy that I always think I can be, right, to stand up. So I have this regret, and I hold on to this regret because it allows me to learn, allows me to grow, allows me to think about, being a better person. So I don't think regret necessarily has to be a horrible thing. And every day I think about it, and I think about being a better person, and I try really hard, and then I get behind the wheel, and I have to drive in LA traffic. So that's my story of regret. So, thank you. Our first storyteller is John M.
David, this story is for you tonight. I was touched by your story. You'll see why in a minute. His name was Peter Johnson. He was about 12, 13 years old, as I was at the time. And Peter was the classic, quintessential schoolyard bully. Peter considered himself to be superior to anybody that he could push around or humiliate or intimidate or dominate. Like most bullies, he was mostly talk and bluster. He was always regaling his friends with some elaborate tale of his most recent escapades and conquests. He was very braggadocious. And Peter did have friends. He had people who followed him around and hung out with him, listened to his stories, laughed at his jokes, pretty much went along with everything. Why? Because they knew they were better off being counted among his friends than his victims. They aligned themselves with him because they knew it was better to be the windshield than the bug. And who was I? Of course, I was the bug. I was the guy who was crawling around on his hands and knees picking up the school books that Peter had just knocked out of my hand and kicked up and down the floor of the hallway. I was the guy who walked around the corner in that hallway directly into Peter's fist that had been lying in wait for me around the corner. I was the guy who was held firmly against the wall by Peter's friends, cronies as I preferred to call them, so that Peter could walk up to me in complete safety and pummel me with those fists of his. And such incidents continued mercilessly and consistently on a daily basis for the entire time that I attended Wilton Junior High School. They ended only when the school year ended, summer vacation came, and we all left and went our separate ways for summer vacation. The following year, I started going away to other schools, prep schools, boarding schools. So many years would pass before I would ever again see or hear the name of Peter Johnson. Now, in the years that followed, I did go away to other schools. I traveled to other places. I met new people, made new friends, learned things, got some therapy, became interested in music, picked up the guitar, started playing songs, eventually started writing songs and performing them. And after some 15 years' time, behold, the bug was no longer a bug. But I had been miraculously transformed into a now fully independent, confident, self-sufficient, professional musician, singer-songwriter. I commanded respect. I had friends. I even had some fans. Another professional singer-songwriter was Rick McDonald, professional musician. He lived the same county that I did in Connecticut. We shared many of the same friends and fans, played many of the same venues, sometimes even played the same shows together. And we would often spot each other, I in his audience or he in mine. And so it was one particular night, Rick and I made eye contact with each other, he from the stage where he was performing to a packed house, and I from the center of the room where I was looking for a place to sit. And there was, right next to me, there was a large table, a party of about 7 people, and one empty chair, which they graciously offered to me, and I accepted. I turned my chair to face the stage and listened to my friend Rick perform. And as I was listening, I was aware of conversation going on around me. And behind me, there was this one voice in particular, this one conversation. And there was something oddly familiar to me about this voice. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but there was just something familiar. This guy was regaling the two women sitting on either side of him with some elaborate tale of his recent conquests and escapades. And he was very braggadocious. And there was just something oddly familiar about his voice. And so when my friend Rick took his break, I turned my chair around and faced the table, and I glanced up a few times at this guy who was still talking. And he started glancing up at me the same way. There was something peculiar to him about me as well. And finally he said to me, he said, "Do I know you from someplace? Have you and I met?" And this whole time I'd been looking at him trying to figure it out, and it finally hit me. And I said, "Is your name Peter?" And he got this kind of half smile on his face. And he said, "Who are you? Do I know you from somewhere? Where do I know you from? What's your name? I have a feeling I've met you somewhere before. Who are you?" I said, "Is your name Peter Johnson?" And he's like, "This is driving me crazy. Who are you? How do I know you? Where do I know you from? What's your name?" And I looked him right in the eye. And I said, "My name is John Mollenhauer." And I watched the blood drain out of his face. And he became pale. And his whole form just kind of changed. It was as if someone let some of the air out of him. And he just kind of deflated. And he looked at me and he just kept saying, "Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh man. Oh, John, oh my God. I can't believe this. Oh man, I was such a prick to you. Oh my God." And he turned to the woman next to him. He said, "I was so mean to this guy. Oh man, John, I can't believe this. Wow, man, I am so sorry. I can't believe this is happening. Can I buy you a beer?" And I looked at him and I said, "Yeah, you can buy me a beer." And that is the story of Peter Johnson's regret. I should mention, I am not a professional storyteller, but I am a professional musician, and I will be playing exactly 1 month from tomorrow night with a guitar, at which times I am much more comfortable. And I would be honored if some of you would come to that show. It's at the Coffee Gallery backstage in Altadena, and I have flyers here if anybody's interested. Thank you.
John, that was wonderful. Thank you for doing that. Great story. And the interesting thing about Peter being a bully, I was not a physical bully. I was a verbal bully. And that's much better.
It is better.
No, I never really had a desire to be physical when I was a bully. I was more of a... I just like to make my friends laugh by being incredibly, mean verbally to people. And like I said, every time I did it chipped away at me a little bit. So hopefully some of these people that I was a jerk to may watch this and realize that I, was soulless. Anyway, our next storyteller is Jonathan Watts.
Thank you, David. Let's give it up for David Malley, without whom none of us would be here tonight. So I just wanted to say that because for those of you who've seen the videos online or who were here last time, he kind of implied I was ungrateful when he introduced me. So I wanted to make it my mission tonight to make him regret that. the verbal bully that you are. So. All right. What was I going to talk about now? Got distracted by my barb. Okay. Well, you know, it's not often you get to come to a bar and talk about your regrets, right? That doesn't happen very frequently. So I appreciate the opportunity. Regret's an interesting thing to me. You know, I was, when David told me the theme for this week's show, I thought about it and I thought, well, first off, there's a video and it's gonna be out there, and so I gotta be careful what I say. I know a lot of the people in this room, so that kind of takes a lot of those stories right out of the running. And then I started thinking more about regret as kind of a concept, and you know, there's something someone told me a long time ago. I work in a corporate environment. I take lots of leadership classes, and one of the things they say is that, you know, having a safe place to fail and a safe place to make mistakes is critical to being successful. And regret usually kind of hangs around things that you've done that you know were mistakes, and I think about them more as growth opportunities and things that I learned about myself from. And so, you know, with that in mind, it got even harder to think of things to talk about tonight. So that's my intro into what I'm going to talk about. What I talk about. So I had to go way back, and I think that no one has more regrets than a teenage male growing up in the 80s and 90s in Southern California. Very easy to rack up a lot of regrets at that age with the type of people that you hang around. So most of these stories are going to be about not me, but other people. The first one I want to tell is about, I ran into two guys. Actually, they followed my sister home, which is David's wife. Sorry, David. They followed my sister home when she was in junior high school, and they started hanging around her, and then they found out she had a brother, and at first they were scared of me, and then they actually met me, and they weren't scared of me anymore. Kind of regret that. But I started hanging around with them, and they were a little more rough around the edges than the kids. I went to private school, and these were public school kids, and it was actually in those days. You've seen all the movies from the '80s, right? It was really two different worlds. I mean, it was very different to be around these kids, and they took risks like you wouldn't believe. One of the guys, I'll call him Bobby. Bobby and I used to like to go skateboarding together, and one of the things we liked to do is there was an elementary school near our house that was had cement steps in front of an auditorium, and you could ride your skateboard up and down the steps and do jumps and all this. And we were horrible at it, and we kept falling off and hurting ourselves. But we had this dream. There was this balcony or kind of a cover that went over the front of the auditorium, and you could climb up there on a tree that was next to it. And we had this dream that one day we were going to climb up on the top of that thing, jump our skateboard off, and land it. And that would be the most awesome skateboard trick ever. We'd be legends in the neighborhood. And we talked about it all the time. And we get up there with the skateboard, and we look down. It was all concrete down below. And one of us would make some excuse. My leg's kind of bothering me, and my knee's sore, and I'm not really feeling it today. So fast forward about I don't know, maybe a year after we'd stopped goofing around like that. One day there's a knock at my door. My mother goes up. She answers the door. And who's standing there but Bobby? He's standing there covered in blood. One half of his skateboard in one hand. Who knows where the other half of the skateboard was? And my mom says, "Oh my God, Bobby, what happened?" And he's like, "Is Jonathan there?" She says, "Yeah, Jonathan, come here." And he's standing there, and I come around the corner, and he looks at me and goes, "I made it." Okay, I guess it's not a story about regret because he was proud of that. Similar story. The other guy that we used to hang out with, we'll call him Donnie. Donnie had this idea. We had one point we built this big skateboard ramp. Anybody know what a quarter pipe is? Yeah. Big, huge skateboard ramp, goes way up, right? So we had that out in this church parking lot that had kind of a steep incline in its driveway that we could get a lot of speed on the skateboard and go up and down this thing. And at one point, Donnie comes up and he says, we had this old BMX bike that was put together. I mean, it was just, how kids are, right? We found parts in different people's front yards that they obviously weren't using. And so, we borrowed them and assembled them into a semi-useful bicycle. And I don't even think this thing had a chain. And Donnie says, "I'm going to take that bike off that half pipe." We're like, "Oh, you're crazy, man. You're crazy. You're absolutely crazy." And so he goes, "No, I'm going to do it." So he gets up on the bike and he goes down the hill, and he's getting up a lot of speed. And as he comes up to the ramp, I look in his eyes, and he's I can see there's some There's some regret there. But he's going to do it. He puts his head down, and he hits that ramp, and the front wheel of the bike goes one way. The handlebars come off. The seat comes off. And defying the laws of physics, he somehow managed to go completely perpendicular the other direction from the momentum of everything that came off that ramp and land it with minimal injuries. And was very proud of that. So that's not really a story about regret either, is it? All right, let's see here. Okay, this is a story about all three of us. So I had an old Volkswagen Beetle. It was a 1966 Volkswagen Beetle. You're familiar with the car. The 1966 model had a bumper in the front that had these two bumps that came out of it that were exactly the same width as your average shopping cart. And one day we're driving along at the end of an alley by my house. There's a shopping cart sitting there. And Donnie says, hey, pull over, man. I want to try something. And so we pull the car over. We get in line in the alley, get the shopping cart right between those two bumps. Donnie gets in. Bobby gets in the passenger seat. I get in the driver's seat. We start pushing this cart down the alley. And we're going faster and faster. And we're all laughing and laughing. And the alley's a pretty long alley. It's about maybe, I don't know, 1/8 of a mile or so. And we get going down that alley, and we're going maybe 20 miles an hour, and then the cart's starting to buck. And it occurs to me suddenly that this alley empties out onto a street. And while the car has brakes, the shopping cart doesn't. And at that same moment, I kind of look over at Donnie, and he's looking at me with his white knuckles on the shopping cart, and I think he'd just come to the same realization and regret. And I tried to slow down as carefully as I could, but that cart had momentum, and it goes shooting out into the street, and luckily there were no cars coming. Hits the curb on the other side, goes end over end. He goes flying out of the cart and lands on someone's front lawn. And as we get out of the car, walk over there, he's bloodied but laughing, and it's actually a pretty good story. All right. Jeez, there's got to be something here. All right, well. Oh, I know what it is. Okay, I got one. We have time for one more? Yeah. Okay, all right. This is a good one. Okay, so fresh out of college. I'm not saying I graduated, but fresh out of college, I got a job working at a bookstore. And it was a good job, and we used to go after work, because we worked late hours. Bookstores would close down around 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and then we'd spend, a good 2 hours cleaning up after all you slobs who just leave the books lying everywhere in those places. It's a fucking disaster. We spend tons of time cleaning that place up. And at the end of the day, it's midnight, and we're exhausted, so we go out, and there were bars we go hang out with. This was TGI Fridays. We go hang out TGI Fridays. And, I don't know, midnight, TGI Fridays on a weeknight. The crowd there is not really going to meet a lot of, I don't know, like how classy people, I guess. But once in a while you get lucky, and I got lucky one night, and I met a girl, and I'll call her. What did I call her? I gotta check what I called her, because otherwise I'm gonna say her real name, and then no waiver I signed here is gonna get rid of those regrets. Betty, I'm gonna call her. So Betty was great, and she was fun, and she had fun friends. And again, not the classiest person, but at that point in my life, I wasn't really looking for the classiest person to hang around with. And we had a lot of fun, went out to a lot of parties and things. We just kind of hung out. We dated briefly, maybe 3 or 4 dates. And this was around the end of the year. It was around New Year's. And she was going to Vegas for New Year's. Now, this story, first off, this story takes place in the very early 90s. I think it was like 92 or somewhere around there. And this story is completely separate from any other story you might have heard or seen, and that's part of this. I'm going to get to this. So, if it seems familiar to you, just go with it. So, she goes to Vegas with her friends for the weekend. I'm kind of sitting around alone. I'm not really going out because I'm not trying to meet anybody at this point. And it's New Year's Eve, feeling a little sorry for myself. And I'm just kind of watching the news, and there's this huge accident on the 14 leading out to Vegas. And I think, oh my God, what if Betty's in that accident? And so, it's New Year's Eve. She's probably busy, but this day everybody had pagers, right? You didn't have a mobile phone. You had pagers. So I paged her and figured out she'll call me. No, whatever. So a couple hours go by. I don't hear back, and I'm actually starting to get worried. And so she had, pager also had voicemail attached to it. So I call and I just figure I said, hey, hey Betty, I'm calling you up. Just wanted to let you know that I'm thinking about you. It's New Year's Eve, and I heard there's an accident on the way up to the Vegas, and want to make sure you're okay. So give me a call when you have a minute. No big deal. Have a good time. Talk to you later. I'd like to say like maybe 3 or 4 more hours went by. It was probably more like an hour. And I had a couple drinks at that point. And I start to really get worried that she's not calling me back. So I pick up the phone and I call her again. And I say, hey, Betty, it's Jonathan. Just, thinking about you. Hope you're okay. Miss you. Have fun in Vegas. Call me if you have a chance, Now I'd like to say, another hour went by. It was probably more like 15 minutes. And this goes on, and you can see where it's going. And next I heard from Betty was through a mutual friend who I ran into at the bookstore, and she said, don't ever call Betty again. So now, that's not my real regret. As regretful as that story is, that's not my real regret. My real regret is both that the movie Swingers came out, and that my wife is a fan of the movie, because there's a scene in that movie that is almost identical, except really played up for the cringes of what happened to me that night. And I have to watch that movie probably 3 or 4 times a year now, probably for the rest of my life, because I'm married to somebody who loves that movie. And every time I see that scene, it reminds me of what I did that New Year's Eve. And that is the biggest regret of my life. Thank you. It just occurred to me that now I've told it, and it's going to be on a video on the internet. Okay, so maybe now that's not the biggest regret of my life either. Thank you.
All right. Well, I don't think you're ungrateful. I think it's, just need to make that, public. So how about one more storyteller, and then we'll take a break. Alec, would you like to come up and bare your soul?
Hi. I didn't, it's not interactive. I was just trying to say anything. My name is Alex Manugian. Once upon a time, there were 2 brothers named Herman and Noel, and they became spies in World War II. And they worked in Europe rescuing anti-fascists from the Nazis. And they were incredible heroes. But in 1949, Noel disappeared in Eastern Europe. And Herman finally learned that he was arrested by communists, even though he had helped rescue communists from the Nazis. And so he flew to Poland, furious and seething with righteous indignation, to go set these morons straight and free his brother. And he was brought to a police station, taken to the cellar where he was kept for 5 years. And when he was finally freed 5 years later, like his brother, who had been kept for 6 years, and his brother's wife, and his brother's 2 children, they asked him if he had any regrets about what he'd done, and he said his only regret was that stupid righteous indignation he walked in with that made him so blind to the danger that he walked into. Well, my brother and I, in 1988, started a painting company. We were not quite as heroic as these 2 brothers, but we were pretty awesome at painting. When we started, there were 7 painting companies in our town, and 2 years later, there were 2, us and the painting company that had been there for generations. And we painted amazing places. We painted a church, we painted a town hall, we painted 2 churches. We painted houses from the 1800s, houses from the 1700s. And one time we got a call from an old couple who had a house from 1664. This was and still is one of the oldest standing houses in America. And my brother couldn't do the job. He was busy, but I couldn't turn it down. It was irresistible to work on a house that was that old. Well, he wanted me to glaze all the windows of his house. Glazing is that putty that goes around all the panes of old windows. And that's a specialized job, and you get to charge a lot for that, 3 or 4 times what you charge for painting. But this couple were in their 80s, and the gentleman, Mr. Field, did not believe in the fees of the 1990s. He believed in the fees of the 1950s, and he was mortified at what I wanted to charge him. So I agreed to a much lower rate than I should have. And then it got more complicated because there was only one door to the house, and it was locked with a 330-year-old iron key. So he refused to let me have it, so he refused to let me go in and out of his house. And I explained to him that's pretty hard to open and close all the windows and do all the glazing if you can't get in the house, but he refused to let me in the house. And he would stand and watch me as I did the work and criticize me as I went. And I did not care for this gentleman. Luckily for me, he and his wife went on a trip partway through the visit. And as soon as they left, he put his son in charge, his grown son, and his son immediately said, "Of course you can have the key. You can get in and out of the house anytime you want." And I was really appreciative. And he just said, you know, just take care of the key. It's very important to him. And of course, I swore I would take great care of the key. So by lunchtime that day, I lost the key. And I looked everywhere. I looked in all of my supplies and my tools. I looked all over the ground. I scoured the ground. I could not find the key. I rented a metal detector. And I looked everywhere, and I found some nails. I didn't find any awesome old coins like you always think you're going to when you rent a metal. At least that was my dream as a kid. I'd rent them. Jesse, you know what I mean? You rent a metal detector. You think you're going to find awesome treasures. I found nails, and I didn't find an iron key. And I confessed it finally to the son, Alan, and he was a 47, 48-year-old man, and the look of horror on his face was maybe the worst part about it, because I was going to get him in trouble with his crotchety old father, Mr. Field. And I started to get mad. I started, instead of feeling guilty, I felt more and more indignant about the fact that this old man was even making me feel this way. He had put me in this situation. He had made me lose this key by being so crotchety about it all. But I kept looking, and I looked everywhere, and finally, I was looking in places where it couldn't possibly be. And I looked inside the house, in drawers of their house, and I'll admit, in every house that I ever painted, I went through all the drawers of all the houses. I never stole a thing. I never even borrowed anything, like the previous storyteller. Borrowed, which he officially didn't regret, by the way. I never stole. Oh, why should you? It's a good bike. Why should I never took a thing. I just wanted to learn everything about these families. Well, I finally found it. Not the key. I found the manuscript that this man was writing about when 40 years earlier he had flown into Warsaw to find his brother and got thrown in a cellar for 5 years. And I felt kind of bad about that. And it reminds me of what Garrison Keillor likes to say, which is that righteous indignation is actually America's favorite pastime. And the worst moment for me was when they returned, and I had to tell him that I'd lost his key. What I didn't know at the time was this was their first trip back to Eastern Europe since the wall had fallen. He was doing research for his book. And when I told him, he laughed this high-pitched laugh. It was the perfect vocalization of disbelief. And then he just walked away. And then his wife, the same wife who would rescue him from that prison after 5 years, risking her own life to do so, forgave me immediately, said it was all right. I didn't have to worry about it. And that was truly the worst moment, because that was the moment that my righteous indignation bubble burst. And I felt so ashamed and so regretful. I never found the key. The flap cover of the book has a quote from a reviewer that said that Herman Field survived those 5 years of psychological torture and living in a straitjacket and endless interrogations with his wit, with his courage and with his Quaker pacifist upbringing. So this was the ogre that I had found to be so evil, was this true hero and pacifist Quaker. And still to this day, I've never found a key. I have a feeling it's buried away in some cellar in Warsaw, and hopefully someday I'll find it, but it will not make the shame go away. Thank you.
Welcome back. This is part 2 of chapter 2, Everyday Short Stories. For you guys who are just now joining us, what I'm doing is once a month I throw out a topic, and then people come up and they spend 5 minutes telling a story based on that topic. This month I picked regret, and it seems to be working out very well, getting some amazing stories. So thank you, everybody. Yes. Yeah. I'd like to bring up Jesse M.
Jesse M. I'm so sorry. No, I'm not. I made copies. Oh, okay.
No, I haven't done this in a long, long time, so I made ridiculously copious notes. To the point that I'm going to show you the notes now. I'm like, oh, they're all typed out. Hey, everybody. Hey. Welcome. Hey. Welcome to Everyday Short Stories. Sir, working the sound booth there, what's your name? Luke. Let's have a hand for Luke, everybody. Luke has to sit through a shitload of stories about regret. He's going to go home and do bad things. It's okay, Luke. They're all just stories. You're strong, Luke. You can handle it. So as he said, my name is Jesse M. Jesse Mackey. There's another Jesse that's going to come up later. We travel in packs. So first of all, congratulations, everybody, and thank you for telling your stories of regret. I'm going to go over the 5 minutes. I think it's important. I think we all have regrets. We all feel regret. It's nice to come out and share those and maybe help some others with your tales of woe. Perhaps make someone else not make that bad decision or something that did not do the thing that they regret not doing. My tale of regret is not mine, so much as it's a tale of regret that I experienced firsthand, and I was the only one in the room to experience it. So I feel like I took on a portion of that regret. I call it the cautionary tale of Captain Jack and his moment of woe. My story of regret takes place, like so many other stories of regret, in the bathroom of an off-strip hotel casino in Las Vegas, Nevada. Yes, so many tales of regret in the bathroom. So when I turned 40, some 5 years ago, I forced the wife to go to Vegas with me. I enjoy Las Vegas for making my own memories of regret involving binge drinking and bad eating choices. So I enjoy going there for the gambling and that sort of thing. So the wife and I had just knocked down a few Guinness at insert your name, insert name here, annoyingly offensive Irish pub, because they're all over Vegas. It's just a shitload of, we're Irish. They don't get the drunks in here. There's some poor Dublin expat on the stage in some sort of indentured servitude program who has to sit there and twang out the Wild Rover to a bunch of dudes ordering car bombs. It's awful. So I was in that place, and I was that guy. No, I don't. So I had a couple of too many Guinness, as you do in Las Vegas, and went to the hotel casino bathroom across the way, which, upon entering, I was excited to find out that I was the only person in this entire gigantic hotel casino bathroom. I felt what the King of France must have felt like when relieving himself at the Palace of Versailles. Golden fixtures, massive marble structures everywhere, and just me. I was so excited that I believe, I had a couple of drinks, I believe, when noticing the empty bathroom, went, ho-ho! Because I felt very French in that moment. Like I said, the gilded fixtures and the marble. So after my French exclamation, I proceeded to the urinal, like you do. And then as I was taking care of business, in hobbled quickly a man that I've come to years later lovingly refer to as Captain Jack. I never met the man. We never exchanged words. I never spoke to him. I barely looked at him once. But in my head, after telling this story hundreds of times, that's just the name that stuck, because in addition to his black Velcro orthopedic shoes and compression socks, he was wearing shorts, a Hawaiian shirt, and one of those Greek fisherman caps that you see a lot, frequently, on some older folks. No offense, of course, not you, but older folks with the, you're not old, with the Greek fisherman's hat. So in my head, immediately, my drunken mind, I imagined he was some sort of sailor who maybe led fishing excursions or pleasure cruises or whatever it was. So Captain Jack pulls into port 6 or 7 stalls away from me, because there was like 50 stalls, or 50 urinals, like that, you know, in Vegas. Captain Jack pulls into port. Okay, I look over and think to my head, oh, Captain Jack. Like, it's just immediately the shirt and the hat. Oh, Captain Jack. So I'm taking care of business. Captain Jack's taking care of his business. He, I think, also had imbibed a couple too many adult beverages, because the speed of his hobble made it seem as if he really needed to get something taken care of. And so he quickly pulled into port and began taking care of his own business. And then during the process, again, not talking to each other, no one else in the bathroom, nothing going on, Captain Jack let out a little something extra, as I found happens as you get older. I'm, like I said, now 45, and I find myself now, perhaps those of you in the room can back me up. I don't want to point fingers, but sometimes, as you get older, how to say this, the locks on the doors get a little looser. Things get, the 1,600-year-old lock gets a little looser, and things creep out when maybe you didn't expect it to in a public place, but you go with it. And as you get older, you don't care anymore. I don't care anymore. It still makes me laugh. I used to be, as a kid, I thought it was hilarious. And don't get me wrong, I still think it's hilarious when that happens in a public bathroom. I used to be the kid who laughed at the show. Now I'm occasionally the calliope player at the circus. If that makes any sense. My thinly veiled reference to what was going on. So Captain Jack, mid-urination, lets out a little something, as you do. I chuckle to myself a little bit. During the middle of that exclamation, for lack of a better term, things went wrong for Captain Jack. You could. It's rare in life when you can hear a change in element, a change in the form of an element, and he went from gaseous to solid. To put it into Captain Jack type nautical terms, he meant to just put a little wind in the aft sail, but accidentally dropped anchor on the poop deck. If that makes any sense. You all get where I'm going with it. So poor Captain Jack, and you could hear it happen. At the exact moment it would happen, I didn't say anything, because what do you say at that moment? But I realized that my lips had peeled back, and my teeth had gone into that sort of ooh sneer. It was because I knew the pain. I had previously in college felt Captain Jack's pain. I knew I was, and so I felt it, and it was like oh in my head. I'm like, oh no, Captain Jack. I felt so bad, and he, of course, he felt it literally. So the both of us are standing there, and then there's this silence, because he knows I know what happened, and there's this awkward silence, and it felt like an eternity. It was like in a movie where someone does something, and then their entire life flashes before their eyes. They see all the bad decisions they had made. In Captain Jack's case, perhaps it was taking those people on that 3-hour tour, or going to his love of the sea and leaving poor Brandy at home. I don't know what it was, but I imagined what felt like eternity, all these thoughts running through his head, like, why did I leave college and buy a boat? I don't know. I don't know what he sounded like. I made that voice up. So this eternity passes, and I'm still like, I don't know what to do. What do I say? What do I do? Do I just turn around and leave? And before I can say anything, I hear Captain Jack's sigh of regret. And so I know, we all know what's going on. It's just he and I in the bathroom again, nobody there. I'm not looking at him. I can't look at him at this point, because I don't want to see what late 70s tears look like. I don't want to know. So this groan comes out. And this is, I swear to God or Buddha or Jehovah or Zenu or Yahweh, whoever you believe in, I swear on all that is good and holy that this happened. These are the words that came out of Captain Jack's mouth. Well, I gambled and I lost. And that was it. I couldn't speak a word after that. All I could do, I didn't wash my hands. All I did was the Vegas casino dealer and back my way out the door without seeing Captain Jack. I don't know what he looks like really for that one glimpse, but other than that, Captain Jack just lives on in my memory as a man who had some serious regret that I feel like I took on part of because I was there. So that being said, let me close with the immortal words of Jack Nicholson and the critically acclaimed film Bucket List. As you get older, there are 3 things you can believe in. Number 1, never pass up an opportunity to go to the bathroom. Understood. Number 2, never waste an erection. I get that as I get older, totally get it. Number 3, never trust a fart.
All right, thank you, Jesse. I'm glad I don't have those type of regrets yet. Okay. All right, so how about Ken? Would you like to come up and tell a story of regret?
Are we setting? It occurred to me just a second ago over there that for all I know, David comes up with his own story first and then chooses the topic to fit it, which puts him on the complete reverse of the rest of us, and I don't think that's fair. There's this phrase, tinged with regret. We talk about a memory that's tinged with regret, or with some experience that's tinged with regret. And it occurred to me that regret can also be tinged with other emotions. It can work both ways. I was brought up a fundamentalist. That's not my...
What kind?
Yeah. That's another story. That's not my regret, because I didn't have anything to do with it. But I spent most of my adolescence in church or some kind of church activity 6 times a week. My parents sent me to fundamentalist schools. And so it was a fairly isolated life from the rest of the culture. And, but it wasn't all bad, because those schools, they had their quirks. There were no school dances, for example. And the biology class never mentioned evolution except to ridicule it. But the math courses, the other science courses, the English courses were actually pretty good. They drilled us pretty solidly in some pretty good stuff. And so by the time I finished high school, I could deal with almost any math problem that was thrown at me. And of course, I hadn't wasted a lot of time doing much else, because there wasn't much room in a fundamentalist life for that. And I could write a really good essay on any topic you wanted to throw at me on a moment's notice. And I could read. I could, if you had me read a passage, I could answer the questions about it pretty confidently. Now, those 3 skills are the 3 skills it takes to do well on the SATs. And consequently, I did very well on the SATs. And I'd been a good student during my years in those fundamentalist high schools, so I had good grades and I had good SATs, which meant that I had everything it took to have a wide variety of choices of colleges. When I came to the point in my life where I had to make the first really big, life-changing decision that I'd ever had to make, which was which college to go to. I probably could have gotten in any place that I'd wanted to get in, but I'd been raised a fundamentalist. And so the only college I even considered was a little fundamentalist college in Southern California that shall go nameless because I'm not going to say good things about it. I'll call it Donnie. I was accepted, and I went off to college and was horribly disappointed. Unlike high schools and junior highs and other fundamentalist schools that I had experienced, this college was pathetic. The level of learning that was presented to me there was something like I had been exposed to maybe in middle school in the schools I had gone to. I'll give you one brief example. I had a friend who was a junior, and he was an English major. And I helped him prep for the final in his course in American literature. So what I did was I helped him. The teacher had given them a list of 100 books and the authors that went with them. And he had to memorize these because on the test there was going to be a matching question that matched the name of the author with the name of the book. Now this is junior year in college, American literature. You might think that that's a horrible section to put on the final for that course, but it wasn't a section on the final. It was the final. He didn't have to have read the books. He didn't have to know anything about them. He had to know the author. It took me about 10 weeks to call my parents and say, I want out. I want to go somewhere where there's some kind of education. And my father's response to that was, no, you chose this college. You need to at least finish the year out. Well, that year was probably the worst year of my life. It was absolute misery. I was at an age where I was really interested in learning. There was nothing to learn there. I had a sociology professor who spent every single session that we had for that course explaining to us that Jackie Kennedy had no more culture than anybody else. That was so I hated it. And it was a miserable mistake I made. And the result of it was that UCLA, which was the choice that I thought I might come up with coming out of there, wasn't taking transfers for the junior year or for the sophomore year. So I couldn't go there directly. And B, wasn't impressed with the fundamentalist school that I'd been attending for some reason. And so consequently, I ended up going to Valley State College, coming home, going to Valley State College, which is now CSUN, and finishing out there. So that was a really bad decision. And it was a really missed opportunity. But, you know, regret isn't always all bad. I mean, those things we regret, because there were some other things. If I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have come back to Valley State College. I wouldn't have gotten to take Chaucer and structural grammar from Professor Stryker. I wouldn't have ever got to take the wonderful courses I took from William Walsh at that school. And most important, I never would have met and gotten to know this amazing woman or our amazing children or our amazing grandchildren. And so, yeah, it was a missed opportunity. And yeah, it was a really stupid decision at the time. And it qualifies, I guess, as regret. But that regret is tinged, overwhelmed by joy and gratitude and love.
Thank you very much, Ken. I feel the same way. I feel that, yeah, I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, but all those mistakes led me here, so maybe they were mistakes worth making. Okay, so how about our last storyteller is Jesse B. Wait, unless there is somebody else who wants to tell a story, but Jesse 2.
Jesse version 2.
Yes.
Hi there. Yeah, time me. I want you to give me a red light when I'm done. I really thank you, Jonathan. I love jazz, and this is not something I would have said probably 20 years ago when I was in college. I thought it was noodly and irritating, and now I really love it. And one of the things that I really love in jazz is jazz trumpet. Love Freddie Hubbard, Miles Davis, obviously. Chet Baker. I'm spacing on every. Oh, what?
Satchmo.
Yeah, absolutely. Jesus. When I was 9, I entered elementary school, and we were all given instruments to choose from. I chose the trumpet because it only had 3 valves. I wasn't about to take on clarinet because that's fucking ridiculous. There's too much to be concerned with there. So I chose trumpet because I'm lazy, and I took it on, and I developed over the course of the first year with Mr. Beardsley, my music teacher, my embouchure. That's what they call the tough part of your lips when you're playing trumpet. And by the end of my first year, I got pretty good at it. By the end of my second year, I got better. Better and better through middle school. And by the time I went to high school, as a freshman, I was awarded by Mr. John DeFloro, our band director, who was later busted for fucking one of his students. Talk about regrets. I saw him pumping gas. I saw him pumping gas a few years after I graduated, and that was a sad sight. So he made me first chair, first trumpet as a freshman, and I was very proud. The problem was that trumpet at that time in high school as a 14-year-old basically meant marching band. We also had a jazz band, but it wasn't really jazz in high school. It was, dumb jazz. It wasn't. There was no improvisation. It was just, you kind of sat there and you played your dumb parts, and then, at dumb things, and it was dumb. Marching band was it was mostly marching band, and Monrovia High School, where I went, was green and white. So we had green polyester pants and black, black shoes. We had to hit with the stupid kiwi polish, and then, these like button-up things, and then the big-ass furry hat, right? And they would be like, you have to, dun, 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 and it was all John Philip Sousa, and you were marching like this, and they were like, you can't deviate from your lines or your diagonals, even if there's horse shit. You got to march through the horse shit. And I was like, that's fucked up. I don't want to march through horse shit. That's terrible. So that was trumpet for me. And so I remember I went to my parents at the end of my freshman year in high school, and I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be a band geek. I don't want to march in marching band. It's fucking hot. I don't like marching for miles through horse shit. I can't see anything because I'm, and the thing, they had little music stands that went right onto the trumpet. They clipped onto the trumpet. I hated it so much. And I said, I want to stop. And I remember, now my dad and I had a very poor relationship, even at that time. He was hard on me, pretty uncompromising, and he said to me, as a 14-year-old, his response when I explained what my problems with this were, he said, well, you'll regret it. And I thought, that's bullshit. I'm not going to regret this. This is crazy. I don't like this. I don't have any... I know I'm good, but I don't want to stop. I mean, I don't want to keep going. And he said, well, we have a friend who is he has a big band in the area. He's still playing. If you guys want to go check him out, you can still do this. The Jack Lance Big Band. So he said, you should go sit in with them. He even got me private lessons with a guy who played with the LA Chamber Orchestra. But I was done. I didn't want to. I didn't want to do anymore. You'll regret it. That's all I got. And I did stop. To this day, if I am hearing a song in my head, I hear a song on the radio, or if I'm working out a song in my mind, I do it in valves. I can't help it. I played piano for 10 years. I don't play it out in my, with both hands. I sit there and I'll, watch my right hand. I'll do that. I'll do it in valves. And every time I do that, I'm like, fuck. I do regret this. I regret this horribly because I love jazz. I would love to be as good as those guys that I now revere. And I know I can really never get that back. I don't have the time and I don't have the inclination. I got kids and I'm fucking tired. So I'm not going to. I recently took up jazz piano lessons, and it's a small consolation because there's so many keys. That's it.
All right, thank you, storytellers. Can I get another round for all the storytellers, please? It was a wonderful, wonderful night. Thank you for all the fantastic stories. I'm going to try to profit as much as I can off of these. Next month, I am thinking we should do stories about family. So when I say family, people kind of cringed already. Oh, family, but think about your crazy uncle or maybe your crazy parents. It doesn't have to be heavy, and it doesn't necessarily have to be your family. Maybe it's your in-laws, or maybe it's a family you met. So I'll give you a month, Ken. This is the notice right here. You got a month, family. So thanks again, everybody, and hope to see you next month.